Morning, folks. This is Talking Point here on WESN, your content capital, the best place for local content in TNT, broadcasted in HD. Sean Michael Small here, Sans Keaton Shaw. Once again, we will say, Free Keaton Shaw, hashtag Free Keaton Shaw. However, we await the day. Until then, there's a lot to get through. Of course, one of the daily newspapers, I believe their headlines is with regards to foreign exchange on the front page, and then below that is with regards to the budget. Now, we have the good lady herself coming in today, and that is what she's here to talk about. There's a lot to unpack, but all I'll just say is this, I'll just give a little preview. There is some concern that as the access to foreign exchange shrinks, our ability, our demand for goods and services will shrink, and then that'll cause our distribution chains, our distribution routes, to have reduced economies of scale. That is to say, less traffic means costs might go up per unit of delivery. Available times of delivery might decrease. Things might get more inconvenient and more expensive. It's a hell of an issue because you could understand why it might have to be done if we have shortages, but at the same time, it might cause hardship in other areas. What are we going to do? Well, we'll get into some of that and more when the good lady comes up. But for the rest of the day's stories, let's kick off the Daily Review. And it goes without saying, beware the heat, folks. Beware the heat. I think this is a little bit different than, say, years past where, we're accustomed to the heat, it's fine. And one would say it's healthy to be outdoors, wake up a sweat, play some football. You're waking outside, that's okay. You get some vitamin D, you get fresh air, unless you're like near a highway or by the savannah and the fumes of the cars driving past sometimes could be a little much. But we're a tropical country. That's the advantage of it, to have the nicer environment. Well, now I guess you could say we can experience what other parts of the world have experienced where the heat is getting too much. Just last week, we also again touched upon record-setting numbers. I believe we might have had the second highest heat for the year last week, Sunday. And now for the next 2 weeks, if you haven't seen it in the papers, of course, there's an 80% probability temperatures near 34 degrees or greater are expected to continue for 2 weeks across Trinidad. I don't know what that means necessarily for Tobago. Of course, the environmental conditions are slightly different there, being more to the northeast, with regards to winds and rain forecasts, etc., etc. This heat is so bad, not only did I mention the fact that agricultural farmers with crops are having issues with irrigation, but that is also being confirmed to include animal livestock. There's concerns that, the fields that would feed the cows just not going to be as nutritious for the cows anymore because the grass is drying out and they need a lot more water to survive. Chickens are potentially laying less eggs. And then there's the fact that we have to be concerned about our health and safety in this heat if we're not careful. Same thing for livestock. So hindsight is unfortunate in the sense that on one hand, I don't know if anybody speaking with regards to improvements in agriculture might have quite predicted this predicament. I think we were potentially more concerned about just finding our way to make agriculture a commercial industry that could either break even or be a profit and not necessarily be hamstrung or constrained by economic factors and cheaper imported food, which we might not have the foreign exchange to afford, even though the price is better. However, perhaps if we did invest somewhat in agriculture, we may have been a little bit better off with our local produce. But that's an if. That's not a definite. I myself thought, with weather patterns changing, we might have had new opportunities But I did not have the foresight to consider how bad it could get. And now we have to ask, do we have the infrastructure to really push for agriculture, or it's going to potentially cost more if this weather pattern remains the same, if these high heats are the new norm. Meanwhile, again, livestock need water, crops need water, humans need water. Businesses are now having to deal with the fact that anybody not in an air-conditioned office is going to potentially be susceptible to higher heat. And that's going to now bring up the questions of, to what extent does a business, I don't want to say but they should provide some sort of relief, whether it is to improve their cooling. In some cases, air conditioning an office that is not suitable for that. Making it suitable might be quite expensive. More fans, that's a cheap solution. Is it enough? Making drinking water, cold drinking water, available to staff for free, because the amount of water people might need to be buying now. Luckily, we could bottle our own water, and I assume we could make our own plastic bottles for that water. Of course, then that goes into plastic pollution, and that's a whole other kettle of fish. The unions are saying, well, some of their employees, some of their members, they don't like how they're being treated. I think the OWTU pointed to the fact that we've tried to speak about environmental issues and concerns to our employers, and we were brushed aside and made to look like we were just money hungry. All right, maybe so. Too bad I didn't necessarily see it reported in the press either. So I don't know if it's necessarily the government making it out to be only asking for money, or if the media is making it out you only asking for money, or if it's you making it out that you're only asking for money. But the fact of the matter is, we reach where we reach. They're even talking about reducing the hours for CPEP, which I can understand. The flip side is how many people in CPEP actually work. But even standing outside at times, depending, might not be safe. So it's something that we may not have had to have at the forefront of our mind when we left our house, but now we do. Now we do. Particularly with regards to young children who might be even less aware of what's going on with their bodies and what's going on with the heat, keeping hydrated. Yes, they might know when they're thirsty or whatever, but at the same time, how much agency do they have? So just be on the lookout for that. Next story. Now, I spoke yesterday on what happened with the FIU and their request to look into the financial accounts of one Gary Griffith and his wife, Nicole Dyer Griffith, former Commissioner of Police, current political head of the NTA, who was embroiled in, interestingly enough, not necessarily allegations, but implied. Things were implied. It was spoken around the issue, but they didn't actually say up front what it is, what it was, with regards to how the merit list was handled. Although, that seems so unnecessary. But then, in a sense, to confirm the government's concerns, the Prime Minister kept bringing it up, alluding to it, including one of his Prime Minister's conversations with the PM leading up to the local government elections. I even asked them about that because on the campaign trail, he promised that we will find out things after August the 14th or the 6th, after the local government elections. And then when I asked him the night of the local government elections, well, he said it's up to the courts. Not a lot of direct statements made. So now the FIU head, the opposition is calling for his head. They want him to resign. The thing is, one possible explanation of what happened was, it could be that shortcuts were taken. Right? They had suspicions, they might have had a little bit of evidence. A bank didn't report Mr. Griffith. They didn't get reports through certain channels, so the FIU decided, let's shortcut all that. Let's not wait for that. Let's just go full steam ahead. But this is why I said yesterday, you have to, in high-profile cases like this, cross all your T's and dot all your I's, because I can't fault for the opposition questioning the FIU head. Wanting for him to resign might be premature. I mean, it might seem obvious. Something like this, without his sign-off, is very unlikely, right? Regardless of to what extent he is the front man now. Now, the thing is, investigating the FIU, maybe we should start there. Then see what unravels, if anything unravels. Maybe then consider investigating the current head of the FIU. And then determining what punishment is appropriate for him. That being said, at high-profile things like this, and to be fair, everything the FIU does is going to be very important on a national level. This is not like a clothing company, right? Oh, somebody inside the company did something wrong. All right, that's a them problem. And a body that's supposed to investigate white-collar crime and corruption through financials, that's a nation problem. So regardless of what happens, this situation, even without the opposition's call for him to resign, is somewhat of a black spot on the FIU head. Now, we've seen other elected officials get, black spots. They put their foot in their mouth. They say foolish things. Both AGs made it out, made a very bad account of themselves. But the current AG potentially committed perjury when he said, oh, I was a junior attorney at a time when it was very much, I believe, contrary to the record of his status, and he was a senior attorney. So we tolerate it from elected officials, apparently. Although he is not elected, he's a senator, he's appointed. Look at that. But we tolerate it from elected officials for the most part. But this position is a watchdog also on politicians. How much are we going to tolerate this? How much are we going to just let this go by? I'm not saying he needs to resign, or he should be forced to resign, or he should be fired. But some sort of investigation into this would help restore whatever confidence the FIU had before. That's assuming that the population had confidence to begin with. All right, we'll just mention the last two topics. First of all, the Coast Guard. It's coming up now where the family is asking, what's going on with the situation where our child, our baby, got killed? And this is one of the last times that we heard anything about a Coast Guard boat going out on patrol. This is not a good look. Now, I don't know if it's because it's not a national that the public doesn't seem to care quite as much, or if it's, well, we've had children get gunned down in our own streets, TNT nationals, before. I haven't heard any outcry about that, or at least not enough, so maybe it's consistency. Maybe it's consistency. Coincidentally, a baby did get shot through the leg, but of course it's a baby, they're small. I believe it went through the leg, through the thigh, up through the buttocks. For that amount of trauma to a baby, I don't know how a baby deals with that, to be honest. I've never heard a baby suffer such a wound. But it apparently missed vital organs. The baby's still alive. It's an unfortunate tragedy. This is not a case like the others where the baby was in the line of fire and collateral damage to a spray and pray. This was one of the other consequences of violence, where at the end of the day, you don't know behind your target what you're shooting, what's there. And bullets could overpenetrate and hit somebody that was completely unintended to hit, was not even in the vicinity of your target. This is the risk of gun violence. I'm surprised it did not happen sooner. So the Coast Guard, who's holding them into account though? As much as I'm not hearing enough public outcry over this. Who's holding them into account? I don't know. Meanwhile, last story, I just want to touch on it. A witness who apparently is under suspicion of himself, but a witness to the Morva killing 6 police officers, he testified. He was cross-examined by, I believe he was cross-examined. He had some interesting things to say. The long story short, I'm still waiting to see how this trial turns out. The defense might seem to want to pick holes with regards to the reliability of the witness. Let's put it that way. Meanwhile, the witness was reporting affirmative. Well, he heard the shots. He didn't hear what was supposed to be the initial gunshots from towards police officers to warrant the response, which at the time horrified the nation. I just wonder if, similar to the Coast Guard incident, you know, as time goes on, the public just kind of forgets. This is an important case because it speaks to extrajudicial killings and police violence. And I won't be surprised if it's not a big grand conspiracy, if it's something that could be very small and not as fancy and elaborate as we would like to believe. But on the other hand, regardless of what the occupants of the car might have been guilty of, we need a clear, hopefully we will get a clear judgment on the shooting, because this is alarming. It was alarming then, it should still be alarming now. Folks, let's take a break. When we come back, we welcome the good lady herself to Talking Points, and we'll continue on with the main topic of the day. Stay tuned.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
You gave us the inspiration to be first. We gave you the solutions that put you first. You walked with us side by side, and we continued to serve you with pride. First Citizens celebrates with you 30 years of achieving dreams, shaping success stories, and painting brighter futures together. And together, we'll accomplish so much more. First Citizens, together, 30 and beyond.
From Maracas Bay to Arafita Avenue and Piaco, Richard's Bake and Shark brings the world's most popular fish sandwich closer to you. Open daily at all our locations.
Let the home store turn your house into a home you love. Get everything you need to give your home that special look and feel. We offer household items, lawn and garden, paint center, hardware, plumbing, lighting and electrical, toys and storage solutions. 5 convenient locations: 6th Avenue Barataria, The Falls at Westmore, Pennywise Plaza Shoguanas, C3 Center Branch and C3 San Fernando. Check out our Facebook page for more information and come visit us today. The Home Store. Turn your house into a home you love. FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
On the next episode of Nicole Larson Live, living in victory every day.
Destined, innovative, virtuous, anointed. Yes.
I love it.
That's how I think. That's how I think God actually sees you and even your gifts.
I'm still in psychotherapy, you know, over his loss and trying to restructure my life and to live again because I have that desire and I think that's what God wants because this is what he told me. It's time to stop grieving and to move on and to enjoy the life that he's given to me. You know, he's not finished with me yet.
To say now that you're coming full circle and God is like he's saying, listen, I'm affirming you. I'm bringing you back to your homeland just to let you know how loved you are. And he's using us to let you know that he loves you.
I was able to step out with encouragement and, you know, go to like Antique or go to Scouting for Talent. And those are the places that open doors for me.
Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus.
An encore of Nicole Larson Live, living in victory every day. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. and Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. on WESN.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I did promise that we'll get into the big story of the day. However, the good lady herself, because she was there from the start, so she wanted to comment on something that's also very important today, what's going on this week. And that is, of course, former Minister of Finance Karen Shishera, the person who set up the Financial Intelligence Unit. You want to have your piece with regards to the situation. And I'll just, if I did not mention it before at the top of the show, this situation does not clear Gary Griffith, right? It has nothing to do with his guilt or innocence. No. This is a separate thing that's very important to the transparency of the country. Karen.
Yes, so that I read it this morning, and of course I'm here to talk about where we're going with Trinidad and Tobago in terms of our energy being our major source of GDP. But I read today's headlines, and it dealt with the FIU. So when I was Minister of Finance, among the institutions that the then Prime Minister set up, including what was being done by the Ministry of National Security, was the FIU. So I had passed the FIU legislation. And one of the things I told the Prime Minister and he supported me, was I said I did not want the head of the FIU to be a Trinidadian nor a Caribbean person because of the fact that they would be subject to any sort of political interference, pressure, etc. And that was my concern way back then. As a result of that, a team out of Washington came to see me, this is just before the elections, and came in to see me, and the purpose of the visit was to hire as the head of the FIU, the newly created FIU, a person who had a proven track record, who had no connections with the Caribbean or Trinidad, coming out of Central America, who had headed up an FIU that the Americans supported, Americans agreed with, and were going to recommend to me. And today, I see, first of all, as Sean has said, I am not speaking of the innocence or guilt of Mr. Gary Griffith. I hold no brief for him. I have not been his greatest fan, so this is not about him, but it is about the same concern that I expressed so many years ago when names were being floated to me for the head of FIU, and I told the Prime Minister, no, they can't be because there are too many connections, whatever the connections may have been as I saw it. And today we see why Gary Griffith? Why Gary Griffith? One cannot help but think. I mean, it is not unreasonable, you know, in the air of what you call fair comment, which one is entitled to give. It's not unreasonable for one to believe that Gary Griffith was targeted because of his political activism and the efforts, maybe same thing we saw in Tobago. I think you would find that Fali Auguste may have a same complaint. I'm not clearing him from guilt or innocence, but I'm agreeing with the court that it was unconstitutional for the FIU to go and dig up his private accounts in order, obviously, to get the dirt on him. And this is why we talk, my final point on that is, we talk about us being a sovereign and autonomous nation, and we celebrated our independence just a few days ago. But why it is that we're okay about the Privy Council being a final appellate court, but when it comes to matters that affect our very safety and security, we are not prepared to allow persons outside of the region to come in and assist us where we have concerns, as we have very real concerns about potential political interference. And to me, fair comment, it is more than passing strange that Gary Griffith seemed to be the target, and we have been one of many who had been the target, but one of the few who decided to go to court on the matter.
I mean, that last point, well, the second to last point there, with regards to sovereignty, we have the Privy Council, but we don't want outsiders dealing with law enforcement. But when we have a Commission of Inquiry for Paria, we find a King's Counsel. Whatever ties he has at the end of the day is not senior counsel by his name. He doesn't practice here, he practices there. So we look for that outside expertise when the need for transparency suits us, and when it doesn't, and that's why I said the FIU, I think, needs to be investigated, and then maybe the head. And then we could talk about, you know, firing him.
The bigger picture, you know, and the bigger picture, I would recommend that when we look at the head of the FIU, the person should not be from Trinidad and should not be from the Caribbean, and we should look to the United States because they are partners, our friends. They're fighting a lot of the same, which is what the FIU is fighting against, the drugs and the guns.
And the money laundering.
And the money laundering.
Yes.
If people don't understand that, that's what it is about. It's a circle with the central bank, central bank, FIU, SORT, DPP, understaffed. It's a whole circle together with national security, dealing with our national security. And we need to wake up and smell the coffee and prepare to do what is necessary to save our country and our future generations.
Well, we await to see if politicians will be willing to do something like put a foreign national in charge of the FIU and be independent. Heaven forbid independent bodies be independent. But to the main topic now, Karen, that we're planning to speak about. Of course, it's been in the media for the last couple of days. The budget is coming up. The Forex situation has been also in the media, and the concerns, and of course, the ongoing story of energy, and that's tied to Forex because that's the main industry we have not diversified. So what is your take on what's going on now?
And that is correct. You know, we cannot separate the energy sector from our foreign exchange reserves position, nor the economy at large, because I think it may have been a 2012 report, but a report from the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries where they said that 45% of our GDP comes from the energy sector. So there's no question that we are and still are an energy sector economy, so that you cannot separate the health or well-being of our energy sector from our foreign exchange reserves, which is what many countries around the world have found themselves in great difficulty when their ships out at sea that won't deliver cargo because they simply do not have the U.S. foreign exchange. They don't want your money. They want U.S. dollars. And so you have to understand, and according to the last central bank report, which just seemed to be just slipped in, we have gone from about 10 billion just a few years, literally a few years ago, in foreign exchange reserves to 6.8 averaging, and very recently, within the last few months, we've lost about 400 million. But that's not what I came to talk about. I came to talk really about the energy sector, because energy sector is at the heart of our economy, and we have a budget coming up. So I want to start with a quotation from our Prime Minister Rowley, September 2022, not so long ago, where he said, he warned, this was at a press conference, he's warned that unless investments are secured, our declining natural gas levels have dire is a strong word, dire consequences for the future of Trinidad and Tobago's economy. So if you don't understand the connection between the energy sector and our economy, the Prime Minister has told you so. Then we looked at the peak productions, were about 4.2 billion cubic feet per day. The Prime Minister has admitted it's now gone to about 1.7 billion cubic feet per day. And that is even with a number of productions coming on stream, which simply cannot satisfy the upstream, which is the LNG, downstream, which is the Port Lisas with urea, methanol, ammonia, etc. And those have included Colibri, which started off in March 2022, Iguana, I don't think it's off the table as yet. Shell Colibri started in March, I think, last year. And then the Cassia compression, which I understand is really, from my understanding from a former Minister of Energy, it's really like scraping the bottom of the barrel, vacuuming it up, because you very little natural gas left, so you're trying to vacuum it up. That's my understanding of that. And of course, we have the hibiscus platform, which is where the gas from the Dragon Field, 17 kilometers away, would have reached the hibiscus platform, and then NGC, which is has control and owns all the pipelines undersea, overseas, on land, etc., would then take it over and take it straight down to Point Fortin for the LNG, Atlantic LNG, as well as for the downstream industry. So, but before I go to how dire the situation is, let me just make the point that where we are today, because it is a dire situation. One of the things we started with, which was a good project, I thought, and it was the gas to liquid. And that was with Malcolm Jones with the WGTL. It was a failure. We had built the infrastructure. They were to give the technology. They didn't have the technology. At the end of the day, the government guaranteed a loan, which was never paid by WGTL. Bottom line, it was stopped. Of course, there was also a change of government then. But it's same point. By the way, all this is happening on the Petrotrin compound there, because they have 27 wells, and this is coming from one of the GSC reports. 27, I'd written it down somewhere. So there's old, there's new, there's middle, and so on in terms of the quality of the infrastructure. So I think the government that came in afterwards had the ultra-low sulfur diesel project that started in 2010 with Samsung. Again, got into problems with technology. They provided the infrastructure, which was the infrastructure that had already been put in place, and again, that collapsed. Then we come to Nikwan. Well, Nikwan, I mean, if you read the papers and if you follow that, you know that Nikwan is in a lot of trouble. Nikwan, number one, they're doing the gas to liquid, but in order to get change the gas to liquid, there's a fracking or cracking. Anyway, it's a technical term that they use to do the conversion. And what they need is they have to have natural gas. I just told you the natural gas fell from 4-point-something billion per day to 1.7 billion per day now. So with all Cassia, Colibri, and all the others that have come on, they just simply do not have enough natural gas for both the upstream and downstream and the LNG. That's the reality. So now they formed the Trinidad and Tobago Upstream Downstream Energy Company, made up of 2 members, one of which is now our commissioner in London. Commissioner in London. Right. In any event, started it. Who knew the connection? Anyway, the idea was that they would get, the government is entitled to, I think, 20% of the natural gas, I think that by law. and the agreement was they were to get at least 1% of the daily gas supply. Well, they owe, as of today, because the last report, it was 90 million US, they owed that company, this company that was formed, but I understand now it's 20 million US they owe. Yes, 20 million US that they owe is going up. But not only it went up, but what happened? 1 month after they launched it, which I have said on this show, that report was not a report, it was an advertisement. And the government had an input in it, no matter what the Prime Minister says. They gave away what they said was scrap iron. They called it scrap iron. But Petrotrin, state-owned, for 10 million to Nikwan, and then invested 90 million US in preferential bonds. So Petrotrin we have an investment in it.
Just a question, if that was scrap iron, what is the refinery? Because it seems as though the old refinery is very valuable, but that is scrap iron. The inconsistency I find is very interesting.
Yes. What other ministers have said, they are parts of the refinery that are 100 years old. And it is true, to bring them back to working, rehabilitate them, is going to be a lot. But there are significant parts of the refinery that can be rehabilitated and could have been rehabilitated.
But if the gas liquids plant could go for pennies on the dollar, why not the refinery?
Well, what happened now with this new company with Nikwan, the big launch, Prime Minister cut me letting. I don't mean any ill will, but I didn't like the advertisement thing. I didn't take the advertisement thing on this scrap iron talk. I really found it not being above board. And anyway, within 1 month, they had a big explosion. They had to shut them down. OSHA shut them down for 14 months. And after 14 months in which they could not operate, they reopened them just a few months ago. Within a month of reopening Nikwan, I think that's the right pronunciation, a massive employee who worked in maintenance, was doing maintenance work, explosion, he was burned and died. And so, not only do they owe now 20 million US to the government for the gas that they were supplied, but the bond that they were trying to go back out to the market to float before that incident is a non-starter, because people have lost confidence in Nikwan, and quite understandably. And right now, my understanding, as of July the 30th, they owe, and this is from a report from a very good reporter in The Guardian, the TT $1.7 billion they are owing to a number of companies, including Massey Energy and Junior Sammy. So Nikwan is, I don't know what will happen, but that's only part of the story. So Nikwan does not seem to be a go. But let's go to where we were looking to get our natural gas from. Manatee. How many years were we hearing about Manatee? How many years? Shell had said a long time that they were prepared to do to monetize the natural gas in the because they separated the Lauren, which is the Venezuelan part, from the Trinidad Manatee part. Now we're hearing as if it's a new announcement, as if they're now going to do it. Yes, no, they started doing it, and they're now going to start. And according to Bloomberg, to get that gas to production, to reach to the level at which you can now export it, it takes 4 to 5 years at least for that to happen. So there goes Manatee. Then on the other side, Dragonfield. Well, the Dragonfield, I will try to simplify it as much as I can. And I really do wish the Minister of Energy the best, because I think the Ministry of Energy is making all best efforts to really secure the Dragonfield deal, because it's 17 kilometers off of the Hibiscus platform, where it was owned by NGC and I think by Shell. And that's where NGC would have taken it over and sent the natural gas down to Point 14, Atlantic LNG, and so on. What has happened with that? Well, every day is like a moving target. It's like a moving target. I will just say, we know that Biden has said that you have to pay in kind, not in cash. And Maduro says, no way. Not only has Maduro said he's not doing that, which has stalled the negotiations, but more recently, the elections are June 2024, he has banned one of his major competitors on the other side, Machado, I think is her name, from competing in the elections. And Do you think that he is going to let go? But more importantly, people, and this is from Bloomberg, Venezuela always concentrated on its crude oil because they have the largest reserve of crude oil, heavily sulfur-based, though it may be. But now they're turning to natural gas. And the difference between the crude oil, which is PDVSA and state-owned, and the natural gas is privately owned. So Eni and Repsol, they have built a platform. They are beginning to export natural gas from that platform to Spain and to Italy and to other European countries, especially because of the issue with Russia. So now the flaring, all of a sudden now Maduro interested in natural gas because they would flare up to 53% of the natural gas and now the Europe has approached the Maduro government to capture that flared gas, which is methane, and convert it into natural gas. So what you are seeing happening in Venezuela is that Maduro is now interested, as he never was before, in natural gas, for which he can be paid by these European countries, and at the same time, he has Iran now rehabilitating the largest. I went and looked it up to make sure I had it right. There are 6 refineries in Venezuela, but the largest one, Iran is rehabilitating it. And right now, the price of oil is about $92. And you know the Prime Minister, which goes back to the connection, he said we're capping it at $1 billion, the subsidy. With oil going at $92, and it doesn't seem that it's going to reduce because they gave you 3 reasons. One, China's recovery, OPEC cutting its supply, and also United States, there has been a rebound in the economy. So those 3 factors have made oil so important. But yet, Biden will not, he may loosen anything with Exxon. He said, but those oil pumps, the money, the funds have to be used to pay down debt that is owed by owed to PDVSA, so they can't use it. But the sticking point with the oil, and I can't see Maduro changing his mind on that. Free and fair election. What that means is that Maduro has to kind of step aside and allow potentially someone else besides Guaido, who we don't even hear about anymore, to take over the government of the, and that I cannot see, especially now that he has turned his attention now to natural gas. What is Trinidad and Tobago's position with the Dragon Field? I think they're still negotiating. One of the suggestions I heard, I don't know how that's going to work, is to do a co-investment with Venezuela, Caribbean and European countries, so that they would have a stake in the Venezuela natural gas sector. And that may be one of the ways around it. But bottom line, out of all what I have said to you, with a budget coming up, a subsidy capped at $1 billion, and inflation that has gone up with food up to 45% from the base year of 2015, with retrenchment happening on a daily basis, with Republic Bank slashing in half its credit, and the government going back out, yes, to refinance a 2024 sovereign bond, 7-year bond, which is like a remortgage. No matter how nice he puts it, 71% of the investors are from America and 2% from the local economy. So what I am saying is we need to be very concerned. The solar project, which would have allowed the natural gas that is used for domestic purposes as a priority, to divert that by using the solar energy and using that natural gas for the downstream industry. But whether the manatee comes online, whether we exploit the natural gas off of the northeast coast of Tobago, whether they find some way to deal with the Dragon Field issue, the point about it, according to Bloomberg, it could take at least 4 to 7 years for it to come to maturity. And what will happen to Trinidad, the dire consequences that the Prime Minister spoke about.
Well, Dragon is not even, you know, like we don't have a schedule set yet to say that it's going to be 4 to 7 years. And Maduro has lived through sanctions while trying to maintain his grip on Venezuela before. We have no leverage with regards to that. That's not going to move him, but he knows Europe needs energy, and Trinidad and Tobago and other nations need money, right? And he's not sacrificing. Venezuela is sacrificing, but he's fine.
No country does that.
Right?
No country does that. That's what that's what they have to understand. Maduro is going to do what is best
for Maduro.
As Trinidad will do what is best for Trinidad, as the U.S. will do what is best for the United
No,
States.
but my point is, whatever pressure that might be put on Venezuela, Maduro's not going to feel it. It's not going to work.
They tried. They called it. They said that when they realized, when they took what they call maximum, they used a terminology, and it did not work, and the army and the military stood beside Maduro. Even they put all that pressure on him, and their so-called interim president Guaido lost his place in the legislature. And when he called meetings, he only had a handful. They knew that Maduro had cemented his position with the Venezuelan
The problem
people.
is he already made the narrative is already of Venezuela against US. The US are the bad guys. So the sanctions are not going to encourage the population to go against the government. It'll just help concrete his support. Now, that's Venezuela. Dragon is realistically not on the table anytime soon, but we have a budget coming up. And you pointed out that the fuel subsidy, there are some people who are hoping that the price of gas could go down and the fuel prices, I assume, they're looking at that. I don't know if they want the old subsidy back, but the question is, can we afford all the things that we might want, or should we expect this budget to really just be another price control, cost cutting, trying to manage debt?
Well, let me just say, because I didn't really want to speak too much about the budget itself, but there's going to be because one of the things I think people may not recognize, that when they talk about year-on-year, things increase by 2% and so on and so on. Perhaps they don't recognize that a year is not an annual year, it's a fiscal year. And the fiscal year starts from, I think, October the 1st to September the 30th the next year. They could extend it to the end of October. That's as far as they could extend it. But when you do that year on year, if things were so bad in 2019 and 2020, you have to expect an improvement. In fact, I got the figures on that. So what you are seeing is that with retrenchment taking moving apace, with the Minister of Finance with his usual cheerful, you want someone that, but I don't think people have the confidence in his word. That's the unfortunate thing about it. Sorry, Mr. Minister, but that is what has happened, because your revenue and your expenditure seems to be gotten wrong every year. So and your implementation also. When did we hear about, nobody wants to hear about property tax, but he said it's coming in next year. When did we hear about the National Institute of Statistical Institute? He said it's going to come in next year. When did we hear about the game changers with Sanders? Didn't come. When did we hear about Dragonfield? Didn't come. When he took over report? Didn't come. I talk about the big game changers, Yes. So when you're talking about things that are used to implement, to make, and where the foreign exchange earners that we have created, where are they? I haven't heard of any of them. Only talk, nothing happening. Where's the planning? When they went out with the deep water bid, a day in politics and in the economy is like a lifetime also, to be frank. Because when they went out, I think in 2022 with the deep water Browns, out of the 17 deep water bids, only 4 was taken up, and it was such a poor response. So people were not interested because these shareholders in Europe are saying, although they're using coal in Germany, well, you see, they never planned on that.
Exactly.
Because they never planned on Russia and Ukraine. So, you always have to be careful about making very definitive positions about anything with the economy. I learned that from Mr. Dukran of all persons. He always say the economy is always a balancing act, trying to bring things in equilibrium. So you really kind of but you have to look at what's happening right now. So what's happening right now is that Trinidad is in serious trouble if in fact our energy sector is anything to go by. And what we are seeing happening with going out with refinancing a bond, which is like taking out a remortgage, right? At a higher interest. According to economists I spoke to, and very respected, he says when you go to take back out a bond and put it back out to the market, you usually put it at a lower coupon rate, a lower interest rate, because you're trying to encourage people, you know.
Yeah.
But they're not really encouraging, usually it's a lower rate. He has gone up at a higher rate because in the United States, I think the coupon rate or the interest rate for every year, however they pay it, is I think 4-point-something percent based on the principal amount. Our own is nearly 6%, right?
Need to attract people to
right. So when he says he got it 3 times the thing, 71% of the investors were from the United States, and it was Scotia and J.P. Morgan who put out the bond. And why do people remortgage their homes?
Because they need.
Why they need it? So why you had to refinance it, a bond, a sovereign bond that was due in 2024? I'm not talking about whether people had confidence in it. What it is saying is, it says something about the state of our economy.
So when you do things like that, now the question is, I know, but the debt situation, that he's pushing it back. Is it that do you think, to me it looks like a sign that they're hoping, well, within 5 years things might be better off, but
but what's going to happen in 5 years?
I don't know.
Because, you know.
Not Dragon.
Yeah, but it's not only, and you know, Dragon couldn't, what I was told, you know, as I said, you know, you know, there's a moving target all the time, and I really do wish the Minister of Energy the best, because I really do think, I think he's trying all that he can to negotiate with Biden to see if we can find some middle ground that will allow them to, because I think the climate change thing is a big thing that we can use. I mean, Mia Morty has spoken about it. I know she's a bad word, but it is true that 98% of our carbon emission comes from industrialized countries. And yet these small, because when I was in government and went to World Bank meetings and so on, there was a small caucus of us who represented the small, I can't remember, they call it SIDS, the small, anyway, developing. I can't remember the countries like Barbados and Antigua and so on, very, very vulnerable. And if 98% of the carbon emissions are coming from industrialized countries, and if these countries depend on tourism for their GDP to support their people, and we too, because we talk about the flooding with our food prices, which our inflation has gone through the roof. Food inflation has gone up from the pay, according to the economists, from the base year of 2015 now by 45%. People can't afford to eat now with the price of oil. We gave up the refinery. And I read a report, by the way, from the Joint Select Committee, and they did not recommend closing on refinery, you know. The recommendation was there was too much involvement because it was owned by the state. It was not only seen as a commercial venture, but a social venture. And that was in itself created, let's say, the conflict. And that goes for every government. So we are not dealing with...
Of course.
I am dealing with government.
It's not party specific.
Right? I am not dealing with government.
Of course.
But what they really said, a lot of the problem was mismanagement, a lack of... For example, the business said in nearly a whole decade, and I know Kevin Ramnarayan has spoken often on that, and I read about it in a Curtis Williams report. It says that the last time he went out for a deep water round bid was almost a decade ago. Why?
Take so long?
You know, where's the vision? Well, where is the, you know, so you have to say, yes, some of the things are outside of our control, and now oil is $92. and this is what they said, and that was a good point they made, and they do that with natural gas. They made the point, I think at the time when they had were looking at it, I think oil was trading at like $23, very low. So he said, what you do is negotiate contracts and tie them in for about 5 years. So even if oil prices go through the roof, you have already committed them to selling you their oil at a low price. And what they also said, it's been years that the refinery has only been refining about 58,000 barrels per day because we just don't have enough oil. Touchstone has gotten some, but we, nevertheless, on a daily basis, we refine 147,000 barrels of oil per day because we got the oil from other countries. Now, if we had got a contract that tied them in, like they do with natural gas, They said all the
which kind of, yeah.
all of those things.
Well,
they said there was no need to close down the refinery.
Well, we have to take a break, but I'll just point out, Professor, Karen is agreeing with you, so I stand corrected on the refinery question, right? I now have to completely, both from what you said and from what she said, and also Mr. San Fernando, once again, as Karen mentioned before, when you have social concerns and profit concerns, those don't always line up. But we have to take a break. We'll speak more about the concerns.
Somebody said WASA. Somebody said TNTech.
we have to take a break. When we come back, we can hear your concerns about things like this and others after News on the Hour on WSN Next.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Sira Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Public Utilities Minister urges water conservation amidst severe drought conditions. St. Mary's College physical education teacher passes away on school grounds. Union slams Massey stores for unjustified layoffs of front-end supervisors. And internationally, YouTube suspends Russell Brand's channels from making money. Now for the details. Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzalez is calling for people to manage their water use, as he warned that the current hot spell is leaving dams and water reservoirs facing dry season conditions. Gonzalez, in an interview, said the hottest reservoir in Valencia had been the hardest hit by the heat wave. He said Wassa already reduced productions from 8.5 million gallons of water to 7.5 million gallons of water because we are already seeing a drop in the lake level's long-term average, and to ensure the dam and the reservoir remain at a safe level, Wassa had to cut back production. A 55-year-old physical education teacher at St. Mary's College was found unresponsive on the school's compound on Monday afternoon. Police said officers of the Port of Spain Division were called to the school at around 5 p.m. after one of the teachers, Joel Garcia, was found in a room on the western side of the school. Garcia had earlier complained of feeling unwell and had chest pains. He was taken by ambulance to the Port of Spain General Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. No marks of violence were found on Garcia's body. President Ermine de Beek Meade, speaking at a press conference held at the union's headquarters on Rushworth Street in San Fernando, has strongly criticized Massey stores for what she deems as unjustifiable layoffs. The retail giant recently terminated 9 front-end supervisors from various branches. De Beek Meade highlighted that the affected employees were primarily single mothers, singled out by the supermarket chain as surplus to their front-end operations. She noted that the retrenchments comes as Massey Holdings, the supermarket chain's parent company, reported a profit after tax from continuing operations of over $514 million for the 9 months ended in June 30th. Internationally, YouTube has suspended Russell Brand's channels from making money from adverts for violating its creator responsibility policy. The video platform said it was taking action to protect its users. Meanwhile, the BBC said it had removed some programs featuring the comedian and actor from its streaming services. It comes after he was accused of rape and sexual assaults between 2006 and 2013. He denies the claims, saying his relationships were always consensual. Well, that's News to the Hour on WESN. I'm Sira Ali. Thanks for watching.
we exposed 5 strangers to KFC's delicious chicken to see if any time could be KFC time. And at the first bite, the party began. We repeated the experiment during the day, during business hours, on weekends, with sunshine, with rain. And it's confirmed. KFC's flavor makes anytime KFC time. KFC, it's finger licking good.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com. Folks, we're back here in Talking Point. The good lady is with me. She just went into, well, we have Forex concerns, and the one Forex that we have right now in any significant way is energy. And energy is not going anywhere fast, and our diplomatic stakes in energy is also seemingly hit too many roadblocks. So you could call in to speak about that, speak about your concerns about the budget, because it all ties in. As Mr. San Fernando said yesterday, it all ties in. We might underestimate to what extent this is going to cause our economy to contract with the availability, the lack thereof. We don't produce anything here. Call in, let us know what you have to think. I know a lot of people, they might agree with the one for more spending on crime fighting, for a higher fuel subsidy, lower fuel prices, etc., etc. Call in, say what it is that you might want out of the budget, but also say where you might be willing to sacrifice a little bit. It's a tit for tat, folks? And if you have anything else you want to speak about, feel free to call in as well. But of course, we have San Fernando. I know you're going to call in today. I know.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Karen.
Morning.
Sean, move to the head of the class. You see that those conversations for the last 2 days that you had, and now bringing Karen today? On your way to your PhD, brother. Karen, I think the name that you were trying to remember was Vishnu Dampal.
Yes.
The ambassador to the UK.
My former deputy permanent secretary.
Let me first say that investigation, that FIU issue. You know, it bothered me when I looked at the information coming out of the judge's remarks.
Mm-hmm.
What I did not see in that, I did not see where the bank or the banks in question had made a challenge to the FIU with respect to them looking to gather that information without probable cause. And that is what bothered me. That is it that the banks just cave to the FIU if they ask them for information? So I think that the banks need to come under scrutiny, the legal departments need to come under scrutiny for that issue.
Yes.
Apart from that, I listened to what's the gentleman's name? Mr. Anselm Richards is his name, from Tobago, who is in the finance secretary advisor position, and he talked about the upcoming national budget and what Tobago wants, and I am amazed that it seems as if they are on Mars and not in Trinidad and Tobago, because it is not realistic what they're asking for. After he outlined all the same things that some of the things that Karen talked about there, and still trying to make a justification for the $4.5 billion that they're asking for.
Wait, it's only $4 they're asking for
when
now?
they put out their budget. I am saying that Trinidad and Tobago needs to look at this whole thing and brace themselves.
Yeah.
Because it is coming.
Yeah.
And it is coming hard. And who not prepared going to drown. One last thing I want to say is we in Trinidad and Tobago are now looking at conditions in terms of our economic activity. I'm thinking about households, where how far your dollar going to reach. Those are the conditions that the other Caribbean islands have been enjoying and have adjusted to. So our adjustment period is what going to be the problem. And Karen, that Lauren Manatee field that you spoke about, back in those wells, let me just say this to you, those wells on both sides were already drilled and capped down by the former Texaco and Chevron companies, because I worked there when I was done. That was before you became the Minister of Finance. And before they closed down, before they closed down and then before they sold the assets to Shell, they were trying their best to get that agreement done, and it was never done. They were trying on both sides with Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago. So I am still surprised that this is about at least 20 years that we still haven't been able to extract all that gas there. Thank you. Have a good day.
I just want to say with regard to, I didn't read the full article because I was getting ready to come to the show. And so I just quickly browsed and I saw the heading, and I heard that I hadn't even known he had taken them to court. But the way that it was supposed to operate, at least and I expect that's the same way, that the banks are supposed to report to the central bank any suspicious transactions. Right. And then from there, from those suspicious transactions, they're supposed to then send it to the FIU, who would then
make the request.
Well, they will then look up from my own actual physical experience of how they operate, and having been shown actually actual videos of the drugs coming in to Trinidad off the Southwest Peninsula. I was actually shown videos, but of course, as a minister I was shown that, so I can't go into more detail than that. But the FIU, which was pressured to come into force, I have to tell you, because of FATF and CFATF, they were going to blacklist us, which means that a lot of banks would not do business with us. But once the FIU had gathered that information and was satisfied that there was sufficient cause for further investigation, they were supposed to pass it on to a special unit called SORT, which the Prime Minister Manning had set up, to which you could not be a member unless you did the drug testing, as well as the psychological thing and the lie detector thing. And you never knew when you would have that testing done. And then once they had done their investigation, was satisfied, they were working as a circle. It would have gone to the DPP.
With everybody else.
DPP, who would now do the prosecutorial part, which is why we needed to have a special division, which is what we intended to do, to deal with money laundering and all of that. So you are right. How did it reach that? What I would say to you, if we had an FIU director who had been appointed outside of the Caribbean and Trinidad and had the backing of the Washington, I don't think what we are talking about would have been allowed to have happened. That's my view on that. With regard to you saying they had those, and I believe you are absolutely right, about how the wells had already been drilled. When they talk about the natural gas, ENI and Repsol said that they had drilled those wells a few years ago well, and they were just waiting to be able to export. Yeah. Well, so we have to see where's our vision.
Where's the mission?
Without a vision, our nation perishes, by the way.
We have a caller from Shogunas. Good morning, caller. Oh, no. Professor, you're breaking up. You're breaking up. I can't understand you. I don't know if you could call back. If you could hear me, first of all, and if you could call back. Professor, I can't understand a single word. We'll take
which I'm sure is quite sensible, by the way.
Yes, we'll take you again if you could call back, but we'll take that. But in the meantime, good morning. You're on the air, caller.
Yeah, very pleasant morning to Sonny and Karen. I want to say a special morning to my dear friend in San Fernando, who always bring a breath of fresh air to this program. My comments really would be dealing with the points that Karen raised this morning, and I am not getting it to reconcile at all with the reports from the Standard & Poor's and Moody. You know, their reports are showing basically some level of economic growth in the future. And from the hydrocarbon perspective, I am hearing basically gloom and doom. I haven't heard anything positive yet coming out of the hydrocarbon industry. And I'm just trying to reconcile both of them. I respect the views. I know that what she's saying is quite valid, but Karen, with all respect, I would like you sometimes to give some positive, look on the other side of it, whether there's a 1% positive that maybe the Dragon Field or maybe the reserves of oil might be there or something. We could look at the input of renewable energy.
I understand what you're saying, and I did say, I don't know if you heard me say, that I genuinely wish the Minister of Energy the best, because I do think he's trying his hardest and trying to negotiate some sort of agreement with Biden. So, so I just want to let you know that. And with regard to the data is what it is. I don't make it up, and I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. A lot of the things I've said before seem to have come to pass, and so it seems to me there's a apathy and a lack of vision on the part of the government and a willingness to go into foreign exchange, other opportunities to ensure that we have the GDP that we need for this country.
I'd just like to point out, when we got positive indications with Dragon, actual positive indications it was moving forward, Karen and I were all ready to give the government praise.
I did.
Right, exactly. But now the indications are not positive. So even if we say 1%, the problem, caller, is there's a 99% chance, if that is true, if that is accurate, that is not going to happen. And that's
but I don't give up hope on Stuart Young, you know.
That is true.
I don't give up hope.
That is very fair.
I don't think we know everything.
That is very fair.
And we might be surprised.
Yeah.
That
is one minister who actually puts in the hours. We have a caller from Diego Martin, I believe. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Good morning, Mr. Shaw, and good morning to the Honorable Karen Nunes Teixeira. I'm going to deflect a little bit.
Sure.
Having read the travel advisory on Trinidad by Canada, it reminds me what was the environment in Haiti in the early 2000s. That advisory is damning. That is how people look at Trinidad. And I'm going to coin Trinidad now as Little Haiti. And you know why I'm going to compare it? Listen to this. In Haiti at that point in time, all the businesses, all the businessmen, all the high office holder walked with their security detail. You know why? We have a similar situation in Trinidad. Anytime a minister or high government official, half of the police force go with them. And that is a fact. The other thing, what they're saying, kidnapping since 2018 is on the rise. Home invasion is the norm. That is what Canada is saying about that, you know. And most importantly, they say the response of the police is late. So what that says about how they're looking at our police service, I mean to say we're in a bad place, and if we don't reflect on it and make the necessary adjustment and avoid voting on race, then we will become a colony of Haiti. Listen to me. I am batting, I'm not a fan of Gary, but I am batting for Gary Griffith this morning, or somebody of a similar ilk, to be the police service commissioner. And we have to be honest with the fact. Gary was the only one that stood up, and if he saw something wrong, he would have prosecuted. And I'm going to tell you, on both sides of the fence, he did it. You remember Marlene? You remember the daughter? You remember the government he was in? He standed up against sports what we call him like sport and things. So he has something in him, a characteristics that tell me he's the only independent police service commissioner since the days of what they call him, all that fiasco with Patrick Solomon and things like that. He stood up to the political directorate and say what is wrong is wrong. He was the police commissioner when they went and, I don't like to use the word, arrested the Port of Spain South MP who was made a minister about 14 times. Sorry, I just exaggeration, but you understand? We're in a bad place, and I'm ashamed of another country painting that picture of Trinidad.
Okay, caller.
They say it's reality.
I just want to say very
I lock up
quickly.
my gate 6 o'clock in the morning and put on my burglar proof.
Okay, caller.
One,
Thank you,
I don't
thank
think
you.
comparing us to Haiti's affair.
Well, he's not doing it, huh?
Haiti is almost in a state of anarchy right now. And secondly, yes, there are things about Gary that I will say. I wouldn't even talk about the issue with the daughter. I would talk about what got him fired from the former administration when he said, yes, I was in the room and I heard the former Attorney General asks whatever, I'm not going into it. And after that, the Prime Minister got so angry, she had to fire the Attorney General, and she fired him too.
Oh, no.
So, you remember that? You remember that? So I will give him that. But we're not here to talk about Gary, because I have my views on that
I'll
too.
just say, similar to Gary in some ways, but maybe not others. Maybe not others, right? We don't want you know what I mean?
I don't want to go into the reasons why I don't agree with you.
We have a next caller on the
for
line.
that.
Good morning, caller. Caller, you on the air?
Hello?
Hi, morning.
Hello, good morning.
Morning, you on the air?
Morning to the panel. Concerning the energy security in the Caribbean, you just had CARICOM was here. No? Isn't this a question for the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs to answer and raise, and concerning the oil refinery that has been closed down for almost 5 years, and this oil refinery was supporting the CARICOM countries, and now they have to look elsewhere. So I'm thinking that this is a great opportunity for he, the Minister of CARICOM and Foreign Affairs, Dr. Amy Brown, to raise the conversation concerning the point of view of oil refineries, so we could rebuild these relationships, and probably they could consider requesting that the government will look at patriotic bid in terms of the development and the interests of the nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I will just say, the problem is Dr. Brown cannot contradict his cabinet. So the decisions was made by the government. You know, for him to do that might be somewhat of a taking a different stance, and
he can't do that.
He can't do that, right?
He cannot do that.
Because at the end of the day, the decision is not up to him, even though it was facilitating CARICOM neighbors, and of course he will be involved in that part of the process with negotiating and speaking to them and liaising with them. At the end of the day, the refinery energy sector, that's the Minister of Energy. But as I always warn, and I think you can attest to this, it's not as though a minister is a king unto himself of his ministry.
Not at all.
And exactly, a lot of major decisions are made at a cabinet level, so that means to say they're made by the decision makers.
Can I say Robert LeHunt?
Who, you know,
who I love very much. Robert LeHunt.
There are a lot of decision makers. You know, the Prime Minister is one of them. You know,
no, he's the boss. He's the boss.
Well,
he is the boss, and that's because the Constitution, which we have, and allows that. If you look at the executive section of the Constitution, is very clear. He appoints and disappoints.
I was alluding to the fact that there's finances that potentially in some
that's another story.
That's another story. Okay,
that's another story, which we have prosecuted and persecuted several times.
But I understand.
He's the boss in the cabinet, but outside the cabinet, maybe not so much.
Caller from Mova, I believe. I understand your point. Just like how Nikwan was scrapped, then maybe for the sake of getting the refinery running, you know, figure out a way to do it with Patriotic or whoever else, because it's an asset that's just there.
But I'll tell you why he might have said so too, you know, because I read a report where the Europeans have come and made a recommendation to Biden to allow the CARICOM countries to come together with the European countries and to make an investment in Venezuela so that they would have a stake in Venezuela. So it is in order to ensure...
My only thing with that is, didn't at some point Maduro's predecessor start to nationalize people things. So we can make an investment, and then when the mood suits Maduro, he nationalizes
and
it.
that's why they say that a lot of the problem is to be able to sell it. And they're going because they said because of the history of not only Chavez and Maduro. And you know, we sitting on the back. I don't want to be a judge on any other country because, you know, as I told someone yesterday, each country looks after its own interests. United States does that. By the way, if anything happens in Trinidad, I'm running over there. But
I'll go somewhere else. I'm sorry.
I know, okay, I know, and I know you can. I can't. But I'm saying is, at the same point in time, that does not make me immune to the fact that America has gone in other people's countries and left it in a mess. Afghanistan, Iran, Libya, you can call it. And made a mess, send their soldiers, their thing into these countries, leave it in a mess and run back home. You think any country could go in, country could take it in their head to go with their army in the United States, especially when they're talking about having somebody, external persons to oversee elections. What is the whole thing about Georgia and that polling thing where they have to pay hundreds of millions of dollars because former President Trump accused them of rigging the polling machines? So then we should go in America and listen, I love America. I'm just trying to say that they have a lot of tents, 10 cities, they have Feed America Hungry, and they have a lot of problems that a lot of other countries have, the most powerful countries. So please, you know, take that into account when you go into other people's countries and fight your wars by proxy. That's the reality.
And this is the thing.
I love America still.
Caller from over, I think this is where the Minister of Foreign Affairs potentially should get more involved, and that would be with
if he's allowed.
Well, no, but with regards to with the negotiations with America and trying to get that coalition of Caribbean countries and...
You have to convince his prime minister first.
I mean, to some extent, right? If we could use the interests of Europe, of the rest of the Caribbean, plus ours, to try to get something moving with Dragon.
You want to know about my views? And that is, I have no inside information at all. But this is just an opinion, which I think I can have. I think that Dr. Amy Brown seems to be very popular with the national community. And that if they had a say in terms of the leadership of the PNM, I have a feeling that he would be very high up on it. And I believe that those who are the head of the leadership right now, as I do, as I've heard it so many times, are aware of that. So to give him, even Martin Daly wrote an article and was praising him to the high heavens. And Martin Daly is a great influence in his country, right? And he has maintained this calm, steadfast, intent thing. And he's and if you are the leadership and the cabinet is not only controlled within but outside, I don't know. They want to give him too much of a high profile. That is all I say, and that is what they call the politics.
Folks, we will end things there. But I would just like to point out, you see, an example of how to communicate effectively is right there in the middle of everything that happens in our parliamentary politicians' processes.
Want to pick him up or what?
Yeah,
and get him in trouble.
Well, that you started it, and you was big enough first.
You want to pick him? I know Martin Daly did it. You want to pick him up too much?
No, but listen, I'm just saying communication style, not just for the government, for the opposition too. But that said, there's a lot that we didn't necessarily comment on, but we're more or less out of time. I agree with Mr. San Fernando. I think this is an adjustment period to the country, and I think just one thing with the standards, right, Karen? They're done at that moment in time, and it's a projection.
And not only that,
and
nobody's saying that they're not worth it. What the problem is, why you're going back out a year before it's due to remortgage.
That didn't happen. I don't think that happened.
That is the issue, not whether the sovereign debt is valuable because you got oversubscribed. Is the reason that you went back out with a higher coupon rate to remortgage a bond due next year. You have to ask yourself why he did it. That's the question, not whether it's good or not. It's obviously good.
Folks, we can't retire. We can't retire because they remortgage the house. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We have to work hard to make today a good day, as my coach always says, and we will see you tomorrow morning. Thanks to all the callers. Karen Shera, our usual good lady of Talking Point here every Wednesday. This is WSN Talking Point. Goodbye.